All right, so this is a new segment, and for that reason, I don't have any intro music or outro music yet because I'm very tired and didn't have enough time to create such a thing. But the one suggestion that we received for Music and Movie Monday, or however we want to call it, was a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once, recommended to us by our dear friend and old neighbor, Alyssa. We were going to do some sort of randomizer for this segment, but at least for the first one, and because this was an Oscar-nominated movie and the Oscars just happened, this is one that I've been wanting to watch for a while now, but just because the timing of it lined up and it was an Oscar-nominated movie, I figured that we would just go ahead and watch this one now. So we just finished watching it. It won Best Picture, so deservingly so. But you go first. Tell us your opinion of it.
I'm not gonna lie. I went into this movie not knowing like what it was, which I guess it's a good thing. But my only word is phenomenal. Like, it was a movie that I had no expectations of. And yeah, I don't know, you probably didn't see it because we were watching it in the dark, but I started crying at the end of the second part, just because it took a movie, it took like the feeling of like being overwhelmed and being stressed and being hit with everything, like all at once, literally, like the movie name is, but like it took everyone's thoughts, feelings, and like what's going on in everyone's lives, and like conveyed it into a movie, into like a visual appearance, and especially just because of the characters and like the how the original, I guess, like the beginning story, how they set that up, it was just so close to like home for me that it kind of spoke to me in many different ways, and it was just a phenomenal movie. Like the cinematics, the different scenes of I guess cuts of different universes, it was just phenomenal. Like, I still am in like awe about this movie because I don't know, it's just it made me feel a way that I haven't felt about a movie in a long time, to say the least. So I don't know if you have anything to say about it, but
Well, I had a very lengthy response to it, so that's why I wanted you to go first, because
okay.
I had a very like in-depth analysis of it. But
I'm still like coming back from tears. That's why. So you go first. Well, I guess you go now.
well, okay. So for anybody that wishes to watch this movie, which is why I'm really glad, honestly, that Alyssa suggested it to us, because, like I said, it's a movie that I've been wanting to watch anyway. So just kind of seeing that, and like going forward, we will do some sort of randomizer or something for it. So obviously, I saw everybody's suggestions. I was thinking about doing a movie and an album today, but we decided to just do a movie, and because this one was so fantastic, I feel like we can describe it pretty well in depth,
Yeah.
and have it be a pretty lengthy episode. So jury's out right now for if next week will be an album or another movie, but at least for this week, I feel like we did a pretty good solid job in making the selection for it. So shout out, Alyssa, thank you for the suggestion. For anybody that wishes to see this movie, before I talk about it, please go watch it, because it really is like, it's extremely silly
In a good way.
but like it does something that I haven't watched movies as well as other people like Tyler and them, who we'll have on at some point, but like it does something I've never seen in cinema before, where it conveys like a really strong message, but it does so in just such an unconventional way.
Very much so.
Like, because I cried too, and like that was a part of what I was going to talk about, was I've never cried watching a movie before, and that movie made me cry.
I didn't even see you cry.
I've only cried. I've never cried watching something before. I've come like pretty close. That was definitely the worst because literally, like, without trying to force it, like a tear came down my face. But there's one Last of Us episode that when you get to it, I don't think it'll make you cry. You'll probably be like, "Oh, damn!" at the end of it. But like the way I was talking to Tyler, I don't want to go down a Last of Us rabbit hole, but I was telling Tyler the other day, the pacing of their episodes has just been so inconsistent. Like one of them is just so fast, or one of them is just they take their time, and you can tell that they wanted you to feel something about it. And the episode that I cried at, they took their time, and I was like, oh wow, shocker! You actually feel something when they like take their time. But anyway, before I get into like my synopsis of it, please go watch the movie for yourself. If you need to, pause it right here, and you can come back and listen to the rest of this before we talk about it. Because I was thinking about doing like a spoiler-free review of it, but I feel like that doesn't really make any sense.
That's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the movie, pause this right now, go watch it, and then you can come back to this point right now because I'm gonna be talking about like spoilers and stuff that happens in the movie. Or if you just don't care to watch the movie, which is kind of unfortunate, you just listen to it in support of us. But basically, to kind of like, and you can help me out here because we literally just finished the movie, which we thought was the better idea anyway because we wanted to be like fresh on our brain. In a way, it's kind of like you want to take a second to process it, but I just kind of want to like word vomit right now and just see what.
Well, that's why like before we started, I was like, "Do you want to record it? Or do you want to talk about it now?" Because like I'm about to talk about everything how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. So basically, the premise of the story is it's very much a family movie and like the dynamic that they have with each other, because like I got kind of confused midway through, like what ultimately are they trying to say here? But it was like every character had their own story and they all had like a perfect ending to it in a certain way. At the end of it too, because like we said, the Oscars just happened. This movie won like 8 Oscars, and I was just going down the list of it, and the one thing I'm trying to look at it. Well, okay, so we'll set up the movie, and then I'll talk about some of the Oscar stuff. So essentially, this movie surrounds the life of a woman named Evelyn. I forget what was her last name.
Wang.
Was it Evelyn Wang?
Mr. and Mrs. Wang. Or Wong.
And her life, at least where it starts, is so the movie's about like the multiverse and like different, like you make one decision and it can change and branch off into its own separate timeline. So where our story begins, it takes place in the life of Evelyn where just like everything goes wrong. Like she doesn't get her happy ending. She at one point realizes that like her marriage with her husband is terrible and that her life could have been so much better if she didn't marry him. But to start out the movie, we start in a universe, which I think is actually a pretty cool thing to do. It's just you start and you're just like, wow, everything sucks. And then throughout the movie, you're like, okay, they chose to put us in that one spot where everything sucks. But the movie starts out in a universe where nothing goes right for Evelyn. And so her husband from a different universe called the Alpha Universe, which was, like, what was the thing about the Alpha Universe?
So the Alphaverse was based off the idea that...
Was that the universe where she created, like, skipping between the multiverse?
Yeah, so in that universe, Evelyn was like a genius, and she was able to learn how to like universe jump. Basically, she was a person that like created universe jumping.
Yeah.
And everyone had like a different potential of universe jumping, and her daughter was the best one, and she like drilled her daughter to be like to universe jump like no other.
So I guess before we go deeper into that, so I'm just kind of like word vomiting and trying to contextualize it for everybody. But so the world that she lives in is terrible. Nothing goes right for her, but she has a bunch of different hobbies. So like she loves to sing, she loves to dance, she loves to act. And you see this because the laundromat that her and her husband own is being audited, and they go to the IRS, and the woman who's played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who we're going to get to her in a second because I have a couple things to say about that. But the woman tells her that you told me these were business expenses, but they're buying stuff like karaoke machines and stuff that just isn't to further their business operations.
Yeah.
So she's like, you guys have until the end of the day or the next day or something like that to like show me why we should forgive you or pay. I don't know how the IRS works, but
Well, in this case, they were trying to figure out how to A, make sure they're not bankrupt, and
Yeah.
B, they were trying to file for like expanding basically because they were making like a certain amount of money but like not enough money. That's why she was trying to see like as her hobbies as businesses,
yeah.
trying to expand her company, like trying to make her company bigger.
Yeah.
So continue.
But yeah, so on the way to the IRS, in the elevator, her husband from the universe where she created, what do they call it? Like
Alpha universe,
verse skipping or something.
oh yeah, verse jumping.
Her husband from that universe jumped into where we began the movie and warned her that there was like a great danger that was coming to just kind of like be the end of all.
And keep in mind, like when we say like verse jumping, it's not like he's physically there. It's more like
His consciousness from another universe.
Yeah. So like in the universe that we're set in first, we have Evelyn, and with Evelyn, she has her own family. She has her husband, Evelyn's father, and her own daughter. And how when we get out to the IRS, what he means by jump, her husband is still there, but it's just another husband's conscious in a different universe.
Yeah. So in a lot of these different universes, they have something that's different about them, but in the one that they're in, everybody is pretty much ordinary. So her husband is like super smart and I was like creative, but he's super smart and kind of helped her with her vision of, or no, so in the Alphaverse, they weren't even married. He was just,
No, they were.
I'm pretty sure he said he wasn't.
Well, how else would they make their daughter?
Well, I don't know. But anyway, so he goes to the universe that our story is at right now, and he tells her that this great evil is coming. She obviously is like confused. She doesn't understand anything. And she's like, what? And then he's like, all right, there's not much time. I got to go. And then gives back the body of the husband in that universe. So she's lived with a choice of, because everything is just wrong in her universe, she's like, oh, well, this is something weird, let's just try it and see what happens. So that's where all the madness starts. So he gives her a list of instructions that she has to do, and if she follows these instructions, then she'll basically get a glimpse into kind of like what the multiverse is like, because the basis of Evelyn knowing that there's other universes out there and the concept of verse jumping in the first place was based on your decisions, which is what I talked about earlier. So if you do something completely out of the ordinary that you wouldn't normally do, that branches you off into a different universe where you're something completely different than yourself. So for instance, the universe that she's in, if she were to, like, her husband did this at one point, if she were to take chapstick and eat it instead of like apply it onto her lips, somehow in some way her eating chapstick would lead her to a universe where she could run at like light speed or something like that.
That wasn't like a decision. That's like an activation thing.
Well, but it was a decision that made it so that it branches off into that universe.
Yeah, it makes you like, yeah.
Because I think he literally explained it that way. Like when you make a decision, it just shoots off in a different direction.
Yeah.
So that's how, and they had these little headpieces that make it so that you could channel that power. So she would do something like eat the chapstick, and then she'd press her headpiece, and then all of a sudden she would be granted the ability to run like super fast or something like that. It's something like that. That's not exactly what happened, but yeah, so basically she has to use these powers to defeat this great evil that is coming to find her. And the reason that this Evelyn in this universe was so important, or the one that her husband from... This is all very confusing, but it's meant to be confusing. Because, and again, if you watch the movie, obviously this makes a lot of sense. But, wait, now I just realized, if people have watched the movie, why am I explaining it? If they're watching,
I was kind of confused why you are explaining it.
Anyway, I'll just do a quick synopsis, I guess. But yeah, so the great evil turns out to be her daughter, and the reason that this was kind of a whole family movie in the first place, and I said that each person has their own individual story. So the reason that Evelyn was chosen, the main protagonist in the beginning of the movie, was her daughter wanted to... that Evelyn had the most potential for jumping across multiple universes and not kind of like losing her mind, because that Evelyn was one where just nothing went right, and the theme throughout the movie was that's how the daughter felt about how her mother treated her, was that she was never able to be herself, and she was never able to kind of deviate from the norm of what her mother wanted her to do. Because also in the movie, her daughter's gay. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, when Evelyn's father is in the laundromat with him, Joy, her daughter, has the opportunity to say that Becky, as her girlfriend's name, Becky is her girlfriend, and her mom cuts in the middle of it in the beginning. It's like, this is just a really good friend of hers, and doesn't say it's her girlfriend. And that's kind of the origin of, you see that Joy just does not have the ability to make her own decisions.
I kind of agree to you in some level. I wouldn't say it's the idea of like not being able to make her own decision. I feel like it's more the idea of like not trying to be what she is, because she explains at the end of the movie that she was trying to raise her daughter to not be like her, but instead she ended up being exactly like her. But the reason why she said that is because she felt, not Joy, Evelyn herself felt like she was an embarrassment and a failure to her father. Because I don't know if you remember, at the end of the movie, she looks at her father and says, I don't care what you think of what I do. As long as I'm proud of myself, that's all that matters. And like, I think that's kind of the idea of it, because I forgot what you were talking about.
Well, so the best way I can put it, and the reason that it is a family story, and kind of what made me cry, because it like, I'm not a parent, but I can understand this idea that parents just kind of, they want to see a reflection of themselves in their kids, but they also want their kids to be their own person. Mm-hmm. And the more I think about it, so we can start from the top and we can go all the way down to the bottom. Okay. So we'll start with her dad, and then we'll go down to her as a daughter. Okay. So her dad, when Evelyn was young, she fell in love with her husband in the movie, and she was like really young, and her father was like, if you like go away with this boy, we're gonna like shun you, and we're just gonna look at you differently from now on, because in his eyes, she's throwing her life away to get married at such a young age and go off and start this laundry business with her husband.
It's more like, so I guess, sorry, I'm not like trying to like say you're wrong. It's just I guess I see this in more like my family. It's more like he doesn't agree with who she's marrying, because they present throughout the whole movie that he's like, her husband is like a goofball, because her husband is, and like her dad doesn't really like her husband, from what that's what I was saying. Oh, I didn't know that's what you're saying.
Sorry. So her dad essentially just thinks that she's making like a huge mistake, mm-hmm. and she doesn't see that, and she ends off going and marrying him anyway, and just kind of having to live with what we perceive to be like a huge mistake in her life in this movie. So that's kind of her dad's belief. And then when we trickle it down to her, again, the kind of what we've been talking about, and the whole theme of it in the first place is that she just thinks that her life is a huge failure. She just has all these hobbies, and she's trying to be anything but who she is currently. And she's just super stressed out. You see in the movie in the beginning, she's got these papers that she's doing. People need help downstairs. Her husband is trying to file for divorce, but he can't find the right time to talk to her because she's so busy with everything. She's having to take care of her father. She has to deal with her daughter, and the fact that she doesn't want her dad to know that she's gay. Like, she just has so many different things that she has to deal with all at one time. And that's the premise of it. She has to deal with everything, everywhere, and all at one time. And it's just confusing and super stressful for her. Her husband is a super goofy person, and he just wants to see the best in everybody. And the reason that he tries to file for the divorce in the first place is a pretty small line in the movie, but he said that he saw somebody in like their church or some people that were like close to them, and he saw that his friend or the person that he knows was a lot better because of it, and that maybe they did make a mistake in he looks at it more in terms of, I can see that my wife isn't really happy as much as I try to make her happy or try to encourage her to be happy, but I want what's best for her, and I kind of need to remove myself from her life in order for her to become like who she was meant to be. So you see his story throughout the movie, and it's like, it's so sad. And what's his name? He is the guy from the Goonies. I really don't want to like. I'm gonna butcher this, but Ki Hui Kwan. I'm not getting that correct. I'm sure of it, but he did phenomenal in this, and he's like one of the nicest people ever in person. Like, his character is probably like a direct reflection of who he is. But essentially, he wants to remove himself from her life because he sees basically the damage that he's done. And at the end of the movie, he has a line where, because like we said, he keeps jumping between universes to kind of like help her and give her tips on how to defeat, quote unquote, her daughter. We'll get to what that means in a second. But him in that universe, he's super confused because he keeps waking up and he's like, where are we? Like, why did you just kick that guy in the face? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And he had a really powerful line at the end of the movie that said, I don't understand what's happened. Like, people are about to kill them. They have guns and swords and everything pointed at them. And he goes, I don't understand what's going on, but somehow I think that it's all my fault. And the way that his story is resolved is that Evelyn shows him that maybe she would have been happier not marrying him and going off and kind of pursuing her own career, but it's kind of like you play the cards that you're dealt kind of thing. It's like you might get to a point in life where you realize that you maybe made a mistake or you're not as happy as you wish that you were, but you really just kind of have to like make the most out of, literally, they said this in the movie, make the most out of every single second of time that you can, because life is just such a precious thing. You can't spend too much time thinking about like what could have been. You have to focus on what currently is. And so there's a point where Evelyn shows her husband all of the universes in which he is just like this super happy, lovable person, and that they just have this phenomenal life with each other. And she basically just shows him, hey, I know that you think that you're the problem, but you're not. Like, we all have stuff going on, and you're just a part of my life, and I'm really thankful that you are, because in something that she talks to her daughter about, he is something in her life that brings balance, because she's always busy all the time, and he kind of like grounds her and keeps her happy in times where she might not realize it, but he kind of does the little things and keeps her happy in moments where she's just super busy and stressed out all the time. And then her daughter is actually the main antagonist in the movie. In a way, she's like the bad guy, but she's not a bad guy. So her daughter, in her daughter in the Alphaverse had the most potential, or Evelyn saw the most potential in her daughter to just kind of explore the multiverse and just kind of find out who she was meant to be. And still, in that sense, her mother is still kind of controlling her life and not really letting her make her own choices. And her theme throughout the entire movie is that why it's like I'm not even your daughter. Like it's just I'm just kind of here, and I serve no purpose because you won't let me go and find it. It's just you have this life that you want me to follow, and you're not going to let me understand who I am. And it goes kind of what with what Thomas was saying earlier. It was that Evelyn just doesn't want her daughter to become like her, but inadvertently she is, because she's not letting her make her own decisions. She's making her like be a carbon copy of her, and she realizes throughout the movie that her daughter is just like her. And that's why I cried at the end of the movie, because her daughter said something like why bother, kind of like spending time with me, because obviously now, because in the movie this entire time her mom was just like, Ma, you're going to do this, I'm your mother, you're going to listen to me. And then in the movie there's just this huge euphoric state about like, why do you care now all of a sudden? And it's just her saying, before it was, I'm your mother, you're going to listen to me, but at the end of the movie it's, I'm your mother, I'm here for you. So it just had such a sweet message, and it was just a very linear kind of like, linear but not linear, in the way of like kind of going down what the problem was for each family member, and they each had their own happy ending. The father saw in the end that he made a beautiful daughter, and even though she might make mistakes and bad decisions, that's still his daughter. At the end of the day, he's still going to love her. The husband sees that he tries his best, and sometimes he doesn't think it's good enough, but Evelyn gives him reassurance that it is. Evelyn sees that even though she could have had all these lives where she could have been herself and done whatever she wanted to, she plays the card that she's dealt with. She lives with her husband and her daughter, who at some points she kind of disowns a little bit for the decisions she makes, but in the end she kind of learns to understand that she doesn't want her daughter to go down a similar path that she did, and she wants her to find out who she is and be her best self. And then the daughter, throughout the entire movie, struggles with that whole idea of, my mom won't let me be myself, so I'm just going to go to a bunch of different universes and just screw with them and test out what it means to be somebody that's other than who I am, because my mom won't let me be anything else. But in terms of what the movie won for Oscar nominations, because I said that it won like 7 or 8 of them. I have the list up. So it won Best Picture, which I've only seen Top Gun Maverick, which is the only other Grammy-nominated film on this list. I wanted to see Elvis. I never did. Avatar, never saw that one. Banshees of Inisherin, I pronounced that wrong too, but I heard that was really good. But this is the only one that I saw, and I think it deserves it, even after, or even knowing that I haven't seen the other movies. But it won Best Picture. Michelle Yeoh won Best Actress, which I feel like she definitely deserved. What else did it win? The husband, he won Best Supporting Actor, which I'm really happy for him, because him and Brendan Fraser actually won Best Actor for The Whale, which everybody was really proud of, because him and the husband in this movie both felt like Hollywood kind of gave up on them, and for both of them to be Oscar winners tonight, I think that was really cool. Here's the thing that bothered me, which I kind of want to talk about a little bit.
Okay.
So Jamie Lee Curtis, the IRS woman, the old lady that she had kind of like weird multiversal like relationship with, she won Best Supporting Actress over her daughter.
Her daughter was nominated?
It was her and the daughter were both nominated for Best Supporting Actress. How in the world does Jamie Lee Curtis win that over the daughter?
I don't really agree with that.
First of all, Jamie Lee Curtis, if you really think about it, was like barely in the movie. Like, if you're talking about just purely screen time, the daughter had probably like double what Jamie Lee Curtis had, or like what that character had. And like, I know they did a bunch of different, obviously, like jumping from, you get to see that person in a bunch of different universes and everything. But I don't know how, in any universe, the daughter doesn't win that over Jamie Lee Curtis. I feel like in that instance, that's one of those like, okay, well, we just know, because I don't know if you know who that is, Jamie Lee Curtis, but she's like a pretty famous actress.
Oh yeah, I know who she is.
I think it's one of those instances where it's like she's just a household name, so we're gonna give that to her and kind of like be safe with that. That might be speaking like ignorantly, but in my mind, that the daughter Stephanie Sue, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, got completely robbed. Like, she deserved that infinitely more than Jamie Lee Curtis did. And I like Jamie Lee Curtis. I think she had a pretty good performance, but the daughter crushed it in that movie, like in every single personality, which is why I'm really glad the husband won it, because they did a lot of what I loved about like Moon Knight, which I know you haven't seen, but Oscar Isaac had to switch between like a bunch of different personalities, and they both did that to like perfection. And I didn't even know who the daughter was. Like, I don't think I've seen her anywhere
I've seen her
before.
from some movies. I can't remember exactly what movies, but I've seen her for sure.
Her voice sounds familiar, so maybe I've heard her in. Oh, she was in Shang-Chi. I didn't know that. But yeah. So I don't know how in the world she doesn't win Best Supporting Actress. That kind of hurt my feelings when I was reading this list earlier. But it also won Best Original Screenplay. Both the directors won for Best Director because it was co-directed by Daniel Kwan and they're both named Daniel. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Everybody got some names I can't pronounce, or just names I should be able to pronounce and I can't. But yeah, I won a bunch of Oscars. Obviously, I feel like it deserved it. It also won for Best Film Editing, which, like,
very much well deserved.
For somebody like me who like pays a lot of attention to stuff like that, they crushed it like completely.
It was so good.
Like, the music was phenomenal. The switching in between the universes was really good. They did different like color palettes for each universe to show that they're each like different, not only in how the people act, but like how it's seen on the screen.
I guess I couldn't see that.
And some of the universes too, they would do different like cinematography and stuff like that. So like you can tell they spent like a long time kind of like developing this and probably filming it, honestly, because it was pretty confusing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, all in all, like I'm trying to think if there's anything else that kind of like stuck out that I really wanted to talk about. Was there anything from you that you wanted to kind of?
Well, the one thing, as I like first started watching this movie, probably more like it was probably like an hour in, because it's part one. As I was watching this movie, because this movie had a good mix of like family orientation, seriousness, but also like goofy, like a good balance of all between. And I don't know if you've watched this movie before, but this movie reminded me, at least in like the first half, it reminded me of like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I don't know if you've seen that movie before, but it has like the very like weird antics. Like, this is the, like, for example, this movie requires you to do like weird things to like activate, to like verse jump and to get like their ability. One of them was really weird, like, for example, by cutting paper cuts in between your fingers, like you said earlier, eating chapstick. Another movie like Scott Pilgrim versus the World is kind of like that. I mean, not the same idea, but just same weirdness, because Scott Pilgrim would just have powers of like a giant hammer, and then all of a sudden he's in a video game and stuff like that. It's like that weird goofiness within both movies that was really, really good. Although Scott Pilgrim was more just kind of like a silly movie, there was no like really moral message to it. That's what was so good about this movie, because it had such a good balance, but it had like a very good, I don't know, like good overall everything. I'm just still in shock, to say the least. I don't know what else to like say about it. So
Um, well, my goal was before the Oscars happened for this year, I was gonna try and watch all of the movies and kind of like base off of that which one I honestly genuinely feel like deserved to win. And the fact that like Top Gun, I love Top Gun Maverick. That was one of my favorite movies
I didn't see that movie
that I've seen recently. But like, I'm sorry, like just for the original adaptation of it, it comes like nowhere close to this movie. Like I love that movie, and walking into the theater, I was like, damn, that's one of the best movies I've seen like probably in
I've
a
never
while.
seen it, so I don't know.
And it was just, this movie was just so fantastic. Like, to put it into context what Thomas was talking about, there in one of the universes, people have hot dogs for fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one scene where these two characters, Jamie Lee Curtis, her character, and Evelyn, the main character, are kind of like empathizing with one another and like understanding each other. And Evelyn like caresses her face with like these hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
And it's like a super sad and touching moment, but like her fingers are just these big like sausage links. So it's
Yeah.
like it's so hard to like feel something, but also at the same time you can't help not to. Like you're just sitting there crying
Mm-hmm.
over like when and they would like eat each other's finger and like mustard would come out and stuff like that would happen and you'd be crying and like that's why I feel like it deserved a bunch of the praise that it did, because you felt these emotions and had these thoughts, and you're just sitting there like, why am I feeling this, and like watching this thing at the same time.
Yeah, because there's also a scene at the end of the movie that like basically got me crying too, about rocks. It was like two rocks, and like there's no sound, no nothing. It's two rocks having a conversation. Granted, I don't know how they're having a conversation, but you see like the subtitles on screen, and you're just like talking. You're just reading the subtitles, and like you see one of the rocks just like jump off, and like you're crying about rocks because like although in the movie the rocks represent like Joy and Evelyn, but still like those are just rocks that we're just crying over, and they do such a good development of like characters to make you understand each of their backstories, to have a connection with them, to feel close to them, because you also sometimes might feel like a you may feel like sympathy, or what's the word, sympathy or empathy, like you feel like
trying to say?
You're kind of like you feel like you're in their shoes, like you feel
Empathy.
like empathy, like you feel empathy towards them. So it's just so phenomenal.
The one thing I guess that we definitely should have mentioned at the beginning of the review, again, we're still new to this, so because we talk about this all the time, but to kind of like put a structure behind it, we're still figuring out all the nuts and bolts. But yeah, and just like that, I completely forgot what it was. Hence what we're talking about. So the premise of it is, so her husband and dad from the Alphaverse jump into her universe to try and tell her to stop her daughter, or to like kill her daughter off, basically to kind of stop her from leaking into these other verses. And she's at one point she's given a knife or like a box cutter in an attempt to try and kill her daughter to like save her universe, because then her daughter from like the evil universe, I guess, couldn't jump in there and like mess up the one that she's currently living in. But she like puts the knife down, or like she uses it not for what its purpose was, because she's like, no, instead of like killing my daughter and like taking the easy way out and finding a solution for it, or taking the easy way out and not finding a solution for it, I'm going to try and save her and like change her mind, which is how I feel like how most of kind of like the hero stories go. Like unless you're just like pure evil and they're like, yeah, you got to die. Like for the most part, like, and some people aren't going to get this reference, but like in anime and stuff like that most of the time, like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, he genuinely tries to like change you and say like, I don't want to fight you, but if you make me have to kill you, I will. Like if that's the death that you wish for, I'll grant it to you. But at the same time, like while we're fighting, I'm going to be like, there's better choices. Like you don't need to go down this path. And that's kind of what the battle was throughout the entire movie. Was she was given so many reasons to like hate her daughter or kill her, and just kind of like end all the suffering that she's causing to all these other people. Because her daughter like kills a bunch of people in the movie, and she sees this happen all around her, and she's like, "Wow, like what has she become? Like what has she done and everything?" And she's given so many opportunities to kill her daughter or just like kill the idea that exists within her daughter's headspace. But instead of doing that, she's like, "No, I'm going to change her because she's my daughter, and I need to be there for her."
Well, but the thing is that you can look at it either way, but how I look at it is that her daughter wasn't really even evil. Like, yes, she killed, okay, I'm not doubting the fact that she killed a bunch of people from different universes, but the reason why because everyone even asked her, why were you trying to find me? Why were you killing all these people? And she said, I'm not the evil one here. I'm not trying to like kill anyone. I'm not trying to start a war. I was only trying to find someone that could understand what I'm going through. And that's the thing, because like everyone thinks you're the evil person until someone actually understands what you're going through. Then you realize that she might not actually be the evil person. She just wanted someone to empathize with her, someone to understand what she feels, what she's going through. And that's what makes it 10 times better, because Evelyn at some point was actually going to give in, because the premise of her evilness was that nothing matters and that you should just give up. Like that was the premise of it.
Yeah.
And Evelyn almost gave into that.
Well, the more I think about it, this is like kind of a perfect movie that exemplifies perspective, because it's one of those situations where I don't look at it like this, but you could probably, like, if you saw this in theaters, you probably could have left that theater and be like, oh yeah, the daughter's like evil as hell, and she probably should have killed her, and the movie would have, obviously that's not the point of the movie, but
the movie would have
been
minutes.
over like immediately, because then like that would have just solved everything. But if you really kind of understand where the daughter's coming from, and you're like, well, if you really think about it, you did this to me, so because I have to suffer like this now, I wanted to go to the universe where you're suffering, and we both just kind of like ended together. And then you look at the mom, who, again, she could have just killed her daughter and made it right for everybody else and saved a bunch of people, but she was like, no, in the process of maybe like some of these people dying, I'm going to try and like save my daughter, because I'm not just going to give up on her, even though I'm essentially the one that put her in this position. Yeah, I think it's actually, the more that I think about it, it's a really interesting timing, I guess, and movie for us to be reviewing, because it really does kind of personify perspective into a movie, and it does like a really good job of explaining it. So that was really cool.
I mean, it's not a critic. I'm just kind of confused how the end works, because the original problem why her daughter seeked out her mom, or seeked out different versions of her mom, was because in the universe that she was in, her mom fractured her mind. And like, I don't know if you remember what that means, but when her mind was fractured, she can always see different snippets of each universe constantly. Like, she can't just not do that. And I guess she wanted to go see and like make her mom understood that, but at the end of the movie, they didn't really address that being fixed. I'm guessing she just kind of lived with it for the rest of her life.
Well, so the universe that we ended in was the one where, when they were in the IRS office, they just went home and like nothing happened. So like the beginning of the movie, and where most of it takes place, is the one where she decided to read the instructions that her husband gave her and like transport into like the janitor closet, essentially. But the end of the movie takes place in a universe where they went home, and the IRS lady, Jamie Lee Curtis, gave them the opportunity to kind of like prove themselves like one more time before she actually sees the store. Because the whole Chinese New Year celebration, everything like that, that's that universe. So that's where the ending takes place.
So she chooses to live in basically a different universe.
Not really. She chooses to live in the one where she's still like boring. Yeah, like she doesn't.
I know.
Yeah. So, and think about that too. That's actually really impactful too, because she could have chosen any of the ones that she skipped throughout.
That's what her daughter was saying.
Been herself, but she was like, no, like I'm gonna choose the one where I can like be with my daughter and my husband and my dad, and we're all just together, and they all have in that universe, they all have a kumbaya coming together moment, and they all understand each other. So that's the one that they go on with. But yeah, really just, I mean, obvious, like we can do ratings, obviously, like our honest ratings at the end of these. I mean, easy 10 for me.
Are we doing out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah, easy 10.
Yeah, like
Easy 10.
I don't even think there's a debate for that. Which I honestly want some movies that were kind of like a 6, and we could like argue it a little bit. But I think we start off on a really strong note.
We should watch Avatar: The Last Airbender then.
No, I don't think we should.
If you want to see like a 2 movie.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Have you seen that before?
I saw it when it came out like a very long time ago, but
it was terrible.
We'll put a pin in that one.
You go Scar was on the wrong side too.
Yeah. But yeah, so easy 10 out of 10. Obviously, we both highly suggest that you guys go and watch it. I mean, obviously definitely recency bias, but just kind of the message it conveys, probably like top 5 movie I've ever seen, like all time. I don't even know like what company it would be in, but
yeah, I'd say I agree too. There's not many movies that I would just say that I would love hands down. There's maybe like I can think of 4 movies in my head that I'm like, okay, hands down, one of the best movies I've ever watched.
Yeah,
and like this would be one of them. Top 5 for sure, maybe top 3 even. But granted, it's also 3 a.m. and I can't really think that straight right now. So
yeah, like I said too, it might be like somewhat recency bias, but
yeah,
maybe I'll wake up and be like, that movie sucked. But
no, I highly doubt it.
But no,
we're gonna talk about it more tomorrow.
Coming straight off of it, I definitely think this is a masterpiece. So, and it definitely deserved the 6 or 7 Oscars or whatever it was that it won.
For sure.
Not Jamie Lee Curtis though. I will die on that rock. I don't think she deserves supporting actress over the daughter. But
daughter's bad too. Like
I don't know.
Kamal.
She was pretty cute.
Can't do that too.
But in avoidance of trying to make this like a super long kind of perspective episode, I'm going to end it here. And Tom's doing the P dance right now, so
yeah,
he's trying to end it too. But yeah, let us know what you guys think about this. Definitely, like I said, just kind of word vomiting a little bit and just kind of trying to figure out how it's all working. But love
it'll
this
get better
movie.
over time, for sure.
Love this movie. Definitely, you guys need to go watch it if you haven't already. But depending on whatever it is next week, an album or movie or whatever we do, yeah, just stay tuned and we'll see you guys on Wednesday for your regularly scheduled program. So
see ya.
See you later.